Butch Miller, thank you for taking the time to talk to us. We appreciate it very much.
Russ, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's a
Glad
pleasure.
to be here.
All right, let's begin at the beginning. Why
Yes.
would you be a better lieutenant governor than Burt Jones?
Well, due to my personal background, my challenges and my successes, my business background, my challenges and my successes, and my legislative background, again, my challenges and my successes. I am the only candidate in this race for lieutenant governor who has consistently delivered and succeeded on conservative policies.
Okay, I want to talk about policies, but let's talk about the politics for a second.
Sure.
You're both very conservative. It seems the only, or not the only, but the biggest difference at this point is that former President Trump has endorsed him and not you.
That's correct. Former President Trump has. I think that Georgians are smart enough, wise enough, informed enough to make their own decisions. And I'm counting on Georgians. And many Georgians have counted on me. And I want to serve as lieutenant governor because I love what I do as a servant of my fellow man. I have a genuine passion for it. And I'm running for lieutenant governor because I'm going to do it on a broader scale. It's not about me. It's about what's good for Georgia, what's good for families, what's good for children, and what's good for our economy.
Okay. Mr. Trump made the announcement last summer that he would not be endorsing you, and I want to get the words correct. He said, because of your refusal to work with other Republican senators on voter fraud and irregularities in the state. Your response to that specific charge? My
response to that is I did every single legal avenue possible, including Butch Miller is the individual who filed for the performance audit of Fulton County. By the way, 26 other senators signed on to that with me. 7 did not. I did everything possible to pursue every avenue to make sure that our elections were clear and accurate, and we did everything legally possible.
Okay.
Now, we didn't have a 3-ring circus. We didn't have press conferences. We just went to work and got the job done. And as a result of that, you see significant changes in Fulton County. The elections officer is gone. 2 other individuals have been released. So we got results.
Now, practically everything that Donald Trump said to Brad Raffensperger in that January 2nd infamous phone call was either provably false or unsupported. 5,000 dead people did not vote. Tens of thousands of underage teenagers did not vote. Yes, some felons voted, but not nearly as many as he said. And Bill Barr, his own attorney general, said there was no widespread fraud. What do you make of the fact that the former president continues to make these charges about the election?
Well, let's be clear. I'm not running against the former president. I'm running against my colleagues and other individuals, a colleague of mine and other individuals in this race. I am laser focused on my race and what's best for Georgia, for the economics of Georgia, for the families of Georgia, for the children of Georgia, and for the state of Georgia. Georgia is the greatest place in the nation to do business. We've been that 8 years in a row. We're a great place to raise a family. We're a great place to retire. That's that way because we have delivered on conservative policies time and time again.
Okay, I get that you don't want to alienate Trump voters out there, but let me ask you one more political question.
Sure.
We'll move to policy. Obviously, running the government is a bit of a team effort. Who would you rather see as governor, Brian Kemp or David Perdue?
Brian Kemp has done a fabulous job as our president. I know that David Perdue has every right to run, but the fact of the matter is we need a proven leader. We're in uncharted waters. We need to make sure that we've got our steady hand on the rudder. And I would be that as lieutenant governor, and that's what we need as governor.
Okay. Policy now. You have proposed eliminating the state income tax, which, as you know, accounts for well more than half of the money that the government spends. How do you make up the difference?
Well, it doesn't account for exactly half. In fact, it's less than half. But the fact of the matter is, Florida has eliminated the income tax. People say, oh, it's the tourist business. Well, Tennessee has eliminated the income tax. They don't have the tourist business like Florida does. Texas has eliminated the income tax. What state do we compete against most for jobs, economic development, and investment? Texas. In addition to that, 6 other states have eliminated the income tax. People say, oh, it'll destroy your bond rating. Well, Florida's got a AAA bond rating. Tennessee's got a AAA bond rating. Texas got a AAA bond rating. These other states have got AAA bond ratings who have gotten rid of the income tax. This is something that's doable, it's achievable, it's probably a 3-year process. It's not something you do overnight. You got to study it, you got to implement it, you got to make sure it's right, and it's right for Georgia.
So where does the money come from?
Well, we'll have a broader tax, a consumption tax. Who knows best how to spend their money? The state of Georgia or the citizens of Georgia? I believe the citizens of Georgia know best how to spend their money. On the campaign trail, the number one question I get is, how do we get people to come back to work? Well, you have a young person that goes to work and he thinks he made $180 and he gets his check and he's made $150 or $130. That's a disincentive to him to work. We want to incentivize people to go back to work. And if we incentivize them with a consumption tax, what else does that do? It encourages them to save. And as we all know, savings have been dropping precipitously over the last few years. We want Georgians to save money and have money in their accounts for those family emergencies.
What about the charge that a consumption tax is regressive, that it hurts poor people more than the rich?
I would argue against that. I would say that a broader, wider tax, in addition to items that we would normally consume, maybe franchise fees, maybe other issues. But I'm not negotiating that at the moment. What I want to make sure we do is that we bring this idea, this concept forward. Everybody said, oh, I'm for it, I'm for it. Everybody in this race has said they're for eliminating the income tax. But Butch Miller is the only person that's dropped legislation to that effect. So once again, I'm delivering, not just talking.
Okay. Let's talk about inflation. That seems to be the thing that voters are most concerned about at the moment. What should the government be doing that it's not doing?
Well, inflation is at a 39 or 40-year high. Gasoline prices are out of control. Fuel prices, that affects everything you have in your home. Food prices are absolutely out of control. When a pound of bacon is $11, and by the way, it's not even a pound anymore, it's 12 ounces, that's a problem for Georgia families. Inflation is out of control. We've got to rein it back in. And people having money that they didn't work for, that there's no value attached to, that's what causes inflation. When the government sends out checks and there's no work equated with that check, there's no value equated with that check, and then people spend money frivolously. But hard-earned money is money that you are cautious in how you use.
Yeah, but interest rates have been ridiculously low, had been ridiculously low for all of 10 years. And the government had spent a lot of money, $3 trillion in tax cuts during the Trump administration. So the government spending isn't necessarily a new thing just with the pandemic. It seems like some of this inflation is a consequence of supply chain, don't you think?
I would say it's a consequence of supply chain. I would say that Georgians have suffered due to supply chain challenges, and have suffered due to shortages of groceries, shortage of paper goods, shortage of equipment. And when manufacturers can't produce their product because they can't get the components in order to build that product, that, my friend, is a problem, and that drives up prices.
Okay. I'm sure that some people recognize you from your years of commercials as the owner, and before that an employee of Milton Martin Honda in Gainesville. Talk about how the experience of running that business now would inform your work as lieutenant governor.
Well, thank you. Politics, just like business, is a team sport. Nobody wins on their own. You know, we've got, I say, associates with a servant's heart, and that's what you've got to have in politics. Politics, people have to work together. No one wins on their own. We took a fledgling business in 1993 and turned it into a successful automobile dealerships, creating jobs, contributing to the economy, contributing to our community, and 30 years later, we're still contributing to our community, contributing to the economy, and creating jobs.
All right. Let's talk about a personal situation. You and your wife have 3 sons,
Yes.
one of whom passed away as a teenager after a life of medical difficulties.
Yep.
How does that change your perspective in politics when it comes to health care and taking care of people with disabilities?
You're referring to our oldest
Cole?
son, Cole. Cole was born in 1987, profoundly disabled. Our experience of having Cole changed our life, changed our perspective on how we look at life. We went everywhere we could go trying to find out what caused that illness. And they didn't have the science or technology at the time. They told us to have more children. It won't happen again. It was one in a gazillion. We had child number 2, Carrie, in 1990. Typical child. We were very excited. We were thrilled. We wanted more children. We wanted a house full of children. We had child number 3, Charlie, in 1993. Charlie has the same challenges as his eldest brother, Cole, but not as severe. If a child's got to go, Cole went a way a child should go. He passed in our home in his loving mother's arms. And it was on Christmas night. So it was a challenge for our family and for me as an individual and for my strength and resolve. But I knew that I had 2 other boys. Teresa and I knew that we had 2 other boys that deserved joy and happiness in their life. And so we picked ourselves up and dusted ourselves off and went to work to provide for Carrie and Charlie the best opportunity we could provide. And God is good. Charlie graduated from high school, standard diploma, went away to college. By the way, he left home 2 weeks after high school graduation, never to return. Both of our kids left home 2 weeks after high school graduation, never to return. But that's what you raise them to do,
right?
To get out and get on their own. October a year ago, a special person came into Charlie's life, Alyssa, and Charlie came home at Thanksgiving and announced to us that his wife, Alyssa, is going to have our first grandchild on May 1st.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And Carrie's wife, Jessica, is going to have our second grandchild on May 15th, but now they've moved it up to May 9th. So we've got a grandbaby, little boy due on May 1st, a little boy due on May 9th, and the election's on May 24th. I got to get this election wrapped up.
Right, there you go. 2 blessings out of 3. The other will be determined.
Yeah. Exactly. And we just, we had those challenges, and we did the hard work to get the job done. We did that in our personal life, and you mentioned the business. We did that in our business life. The first month we were in business, I thought we were going to have to close. I mean, really, I thought we were going to have to file bankruptcy, and we would be. It was dismal to say the least. It was dismal, but we turned the business around, and that work ethic, that can-do attitude. That's what I've taken to the state senate, and that's what I intend to take to the lieutenant governor's office. A can-do attitude, a get-things-done approach. Again, I'm the only individual in this race that has consistently delivered on conservative policies and conservative legislation in this race, whether it's school choice, whether it's special needs vouchers and scholarships for disabled children, whether it's making sure that gang thefts are a felony, not a misdemeanor, whether it's tort reform, whether it's COVID liability immunity that kept our schools, our churches, our restaurants, and our businesses open. I voted in favor of all those things. I voted to protect Georgians. And one of my opponents did not. He voted against all those things. And I think that separates us. That's the bright line between us.
Okay, you voted for, if I'm not mistaken, or we're calling for a constitutional amendment to prohibit non-citizens from voting.
I certainly did.
But it's against the law. Why would you do that?
It's against the law, you're right. And it only takes 29 votes to change that law. 29 votes in the Senate, 91 in the House, and you can change that law. But if it's a constitutional amendment, it takes 38 votes to change it in the Senate. It takes 120 votes in the House. And guess what else, Russ? The people of Georgia get to vote on it. We saw in New York where 800,000 people were added to the voting rolls simply by changing the law. I don't think that non-citizens should be voting. I think citizenship is sacred. Citizenship is sacred, and voting matters.
Okay. Central and South Americans have a right to come to this country and petition for asylum. Obviously, you don't like the way that the Biden administration is handling it. What's the right way to do it?
I think the right way to do it is like many people that I know. You come and make the application. You work here if you're in good standing, and you get your citizenship. I have an individual, a friend of mine that I worked with for many, many years. It took him 9 years to get his citizenship. When, not this past term, but many years, 10 or so years ago, he came to me and said, "Do you have some signs?" I said, "Well, sure. Some campaign signs?" He said, "Yes, I'd like some campaign signs for Nathan Deal." And I said, "Well, okay, I'll get you some." I said, "By the way, are you for Nathan Deal?" He said, "Certainly." He said, now this is the individual that took him 9 years to get his citizenship. He said, people are coming to America and taking the jobs that my children and people like me should be able to get. So they're taking jobs that aren't rightfully theirs.
Okay. Why not expand Medicaid in a state where hundreds of thousands of people can't afford health insurance?
Well, let's be clear. The state of Georgia had a plan to expand Medicaid, and the Biden administration sued to stop it.
Because of the work requirement or volunteer requirement?
Yes.
And that would only have covered, as I understand it, some 50,000 of those several hundred thousand.
Would you rather have part of something or all of nothing? Let's take one bite of the apple at a time. If that's what we need, if we'd gotten that done, then we could talk about doing something else. But we can't, it's like a boat. You can't just yank the wheel and everybody fly out of it. You got to change things like this. This is a major policy. They have to be changed with great deliberation and genuine intent, and making sure we understand the consequences.
Okay. Speaking of consequences, constitutional carry has passed,
Yes.
obviously. Now police and TSA at the airport are saying, well, how are we supposed to deal with people who come to the airport with a concealed weapon? It seems to be complicating their issue. Was that foreseen?
I think that in common areas of the airport, that's still permissible, and that didn't change. Those guns were permitted in common areas of the airport. It's when you go through TSAs, when you go to get on the airline, that's the change. So it's really not as big a change as the media would have you think.
Okay. Your closing argument. You're less than a month now from May 24th. Early voting begins on May 2nd.
That's correct.
So once again, why you and not Burt Jones at this point?
Well, I have 3 opponents actually, and I am uniquely qualified to be the lieutenant governor due to my personal background and successes that I've had, due to my business background and successes that I've had, and due to my legislative background and the successes that I have, due to the policies and legislation that I have delivered on for the state of Georgia. I have got a passion for what I'm doing. As I mentioned earlier, I have a passion for what I'm doing. I want to do it on a broader scale as the lieutenant governor. I believe that we need to always have a steady hand on the rudder. And I believe that I am that steady hand. I am the guy who has been in the trenches. I am the guy who has delivered. I am the guy who has worked very, very hard and will continue to work hard for the families and for the taxpayers of Georgia.
Butch Miller, thank you for your time.
Great to be with you.
Appreciate it very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.